The Galactic Battle Academy hung in space like a massive steel fortress. Inside the great bonding arena, hundreds of young warriors from across the galaxy waited for the most important day of their lives. Today, they would meet their battle companions, the powerful beasts that would fight beside them forever. Taman stood at the back of the crowd, trying to make himself invisible. It wasn't working. At just over 5 feet tall, with a thin frame and soft skin, he looked nothing like the other cadets. The Krath warriors towered over everyone, their thick gray hides covered in natural armor. The Sylph people had beautiful crystalline wings that caught the light. Even the smaller species had claws or extra arms or built-in weapons. Taman had none of that. He was just human, and humans were new to the galactic community. "Look at the pink one," a voice rumbled behind him. Taman didn't turn around. He knew it was Hyun, a Krath who seemed to enjoy reminding everyone how weak humans were. "I heard humans break bones just from running too fast." Laughter rippled through the nearby cadets. Taman kept his eyes forward, watching as Instructor Vexna entered the arena. The 6-armed insectoid moved with deadly grace, her chitinous armor gleaming under the lights. "Silence," Vexna's voice cut through the noise. "The bonding ceremony will now begin. Remember, you do not choose your companion. They choose you. The bond reflects your inner spirit. Whatever creature picks you shows the galaxy who you truly are." The massive doors at the far end of the arena groaned open. Taman's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. This was his chance to prove that humans belonged here. The first creature that entered made everyone gasp. It was a thunder lizard, easily 20 feet long, with scales that crackled with electricity. It walked slowly through the crowd of cadets, its huge eyes scanning each face. Then it stopped in front of Hyun and lowered its head. The arena erupted in cheers. Of course, Hyun would get something massive and powerful. The Krath cadet grinned, placing his hand on the creature's snout. A bright light flashed between them, and the bond was complete. More creatures came. A void serpent, black as space itself, chose a silent shade warrior. A plasma bear, its fur glowing with inner heat, bonded with a fierce Magnar cadet. A lightning falcon spread its wings wide and dove toward Bora, an elegant sylph who accepted the bond with a proud smile. One by one, the cadets found their companions. The arena grew quieter as fewer warriors remained. Taman watched as the group around him shrank. 10 cadets left, then 5, then 3, then just him. The last few creatures had wandered away uninterested. Taman stood alone in the center of the arena, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. His face burned with shame. Even the instructors looked uncomfortable, whispering to each other. "Perhaps the human is simply incompatible with battle companions," Vexna said, trying to sound professional. But Taman heard the pity in her voice, which somehow felt worse than mockery. Then he heard it. A scraping, scratching sound coming from the side entrance, the one used by handlers and maintenance workers, not for ceremony. Every head turned. Something small waddled through the doorway. At first, Taman thought it might be someone's pet that had escaped. The creature was barely 2 feet tall, with a stocky body covered in coarse gray and black fur. It had a white stripe running from its nose to its tail, short, powerful legs, and long claws built for digging. Its small eyes were dark and utterly fearless. For a moment, there was perfect silence. Then someone laughed. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire arena was roaring with laughter. "A Rattel," someone shouted. "The human gets a Rattel. That's not even a real battle companion," another voice called out. The small creature ignored them all. It waddled forward with a rolling gait, completely unbothered by the noise. It walked past the instructors, past the laughing cadets, straight toward Taman. Taman looked down at the animal. Up close, he could see the powerful muscles under its fur, the intelligence in those dark eyes. The Rattel sat down at his feet and looked up at him, waiting. I don't understand," Taman said quietly. Vexna approached, her 4 eyes wide with surprise. "This is unprecedented. Radels are classified as battle companions, but they're considered unsuitable for academy training. They're too small, too simple, too weak." Hyun called out, and the laughter started again. But something made Taman kneel down. The Rattel watched him calmly. There was no fear in those eyes. No doubt, just absolute certainty. Slowly, Taman reached out his hand. The moment they touched, light exploded between them. It wasn't the brilliant flash that had marked the other bondings. This was different, quieter, deeper, like something fundamental had clicked into place. Taman felt the bond settle into his chest, warm and solid. When the light faded, the laughter had stopped. Everyone stared at the human and the small creature sitting together on the arena floor. "The bond is complete," Vexna announced, though she still sounded confused. "The Rattel has chosen. Cadet Taman, what will you name your companion?" Taman looked at the sturdy little animal. Despite everything, despite the humiliation and the laughter, he felt an odd sense of rightness. This creature had walked past everyone else and chosen him. "That had to mean something, Duri," he said softly. "His name is Duri." The Rattel, Duri, made a huffing sound that might have been approval. Then he stood up and walked toward the exit, clearly expecting Taman to follow. As Taman hurried after his new companion, he heard the whispers start behind him. What kind of warrior bonds with a Rattel, the weakest creature for the weakest cadet? He'll never survive the training. Taman's hands clenched into fists, but he kept walking. Ahead of him, Duri waddled forward without looking back, completely unconcerned with what anyone thought. The first day at the Galactic Battle Academy was over. Taman had his battle companion. Everyone thought it was a joke, but deep in his chest, where the bond lived warm and steady, Taman felt something strange, determination. If this small, fearless creature had chosen him, maybe there was more to both of them than anyone realized. Maybe being underestimated wasn't the worst thing in the galaxy. Maybe it was an advantage. Behind them, the great doors of the bonding arena closed with a hollow boom. Tomorrow, the real training would begin. Tomorrow, Taman and Duri would have to prove they belonged here. Tomorrow, everything would change. The training grounds opened before dawn, and Taman was already there. Duri sat beside him, watching the sun rise over the Academy's artificial horizon. The Rattel had spent the night in Taman's quarters, mostly sleeping and occasionally digging at the floor until Taman provided a box of dirt to satisfy the digging instinct. Other cadets began arriving, their battle companions at their sides. Taman noticed how they walked, confident, proud, completely in sync with their powerful beasts. Hyun strode in with his thunder lizard, the massive creature making the ground shake with each step. Bora's lightning falcon perched on her shoulder, sparks dancing through its feathers. And then there was Duri. The Rattel was currently investigating a drainage grate with intense focus, completely ignoring the impressive display around him. "Attention. Instructor Vexna appeared on the training platform. Today you begin synchronization training. A battle companion is not a pet. It is an extension of yourself. Your minds must work as one, your movements must flow together. We will start with basic exercises." The first exercise was simple enough. Cadets had to run an obstacle course while their companions matched their pace and movements. Taman watched as the other pairs went first. Hyun and his thunder lizard moved like one being, the massive creature somehow keeping perfect pace with its warrior despite its size. They cleared the course in under 3 minutes. Bora and her falcon were poetry in motion, the bird diving and soaring as Bora leaped and rolled beneath it. 2 minutes, 40 seconds, Cadet Taman, Vexna called. "You're next." Taman stepped up to the starting line. Duri waddled over to stand beside him, looking utterly uninterested in the course ahead. "Begin." Taman ran. Behind him he heard Duri's footsteps, a heavy, rolling waddle that was nowhere near as fast as his run. The first obstacle was a low wall. Taman jumped over it easily, then looked back. Duri had stopped at the wall. For a moment, Taman thought his companion couldn't climb it. Then the Rattel simply started digging. In seconds, he'd created a hole under the wall and pushed through. "That's not... Well, technically it works," Vexna muttered. The next obstacle was a balance beam over a pit. Taman crossed carefully. Duri looked at the beam, looked at the pit, and simply walked around the entire obstacle, ignoring it completely. "Cadet Taman, your companion must follow the course," Vexna shouted, but Duri had his own ideas. When they reached a section with hanging rings to swing across, Duri didn't even try. He just walked underneath while Taman swung overhead. When there was a climbing net, Duri went around it. When there was a tunnel, Duri went over it. They finished the course in 12 minutes. Last place by far. The other cadets didn't even try to hide their laughter anymore. "The human can't even get his pet to follow simple instructions," someone called out. Taman's face burned, but he knelt down next to Duri. The Rattel looked up at him with those dark, calm eyes. There was no shame there, no regret. Duri had simply done things his own way. Next exercise, Vexna announced, clearly trying to move past the embarrassment. Combat synchronization. Your companion must defend you against training drones. This time, Hyun went last, probably to show off. His thunder lizard generated massive electrical bursts that fried the drones before they could even get close. The crowd cheered. Cadet Taemin. Taemin walked into the combat circle. Duri followed, still at that same unhurried waddle. The training drones activated, 6 floating spheres with stun weapons. Begin. The drones opened fire immediately. Blue stun bolts lanced out. Taemin dodged the first 2, but the third caught him in the shoulder. His arm went numb and he stumbled. Then Duri moved. The Rattel didn't dodge. He ran straight at the nearest drone, completely ignoring the stun bolts hitting his thick hide. 1, 2, 3 shots struck him. Duri's muscles twitched from the electrical shock, but he didn't slow down. He jumped, caught the drone in his jaws, and bit down. Hard. The drone sparked and died. Duri dropped it and turned to the next one, already running. "Duri, no!" Taemin shouted. "You're getting hurt." But the Rattel didn't stop. Another drone fired point-blank into his face. Duri's head snapped back from the impact. Then he lunged forward and destroyed that drone too. Taemin watched in horror as his companion took hit after hit. Each stun bolt made Duri's body jerk and twitch. But the Rattel never stopped moving, never stopped attacking. Within 2 minutes, all 6 drones were destroyed. Duri walked back to Taemin, his fur smoking slightly from the electrical burns. He sat down and looked up at his warrior, completely unbothered. The training ground was silent. "Medical evaluation," Vexna said quietly. "Both of you, now." In the medical bay, a healer named Jiwon examined Duri carefully. The Rattel lay on the table, letting her work while he tried to bite the scanning equipment. "Incredible," Jiwon murmured. "His nervous system is different. He felt the pain from those stun bolts. I can see the neural response, but his brain just doesn't care. And look at this," she pointed to her scanner. "The burns and tissue damage from just 10 minutes ago? Already healing. His regenerative abilities are remarkable. But he got hurt," Taemin said. "He just ran into the attacks." "He completed the objective," a new voice said. Taemin turned. Standing in the doorway was Commander Thrall, the Academy's headmaster. The old warrior was covered in scars, and his 3 eyes studied Taemin and Duri with an unreadable expression. "The drones were destroyed," Thrall continued. "Your companion identified the threat and eliminated it using the most direct method available. He didn't waste time with strategy or elegance. He simply endured until the job was done." "He could have died," Taemin protested. "But he didn't." Thrall approached the table, looking down at Duri. "Rattels are classified as suicidal tenacity class companions. Do you know what that means?" Taemin shook his head. "It means they possess no fear response, no sense of self-preservation beyond the absolute minimum. When a Rattel decides to do something, nothing in the universe can stop it except death, and sometimes not even that." Thrall's voice was quiet. "They are not the strongest creatures, not the fastest, not the smartest, but they are perhaps the most stubborn living things in existence." The commander turned to leave, then paused. "The bond reflects inner spirit, Cadet Taemin. Your companion chose you for a reason. Perhaps you should consider what that reason might be." After Thrall left, Taemin sat beside Duri's table. The Rattel had fallen asleep, snoring softly. His fur was already looking better, the burns fading. That night, Taemin couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Thrall had said. The bond reflects inner spirit. What did it mean that this impossibly stubborn, fearless, determined creature had looked at all the cadets in that arena and chosen him? Taemin didn't feel fearless. He didn't feel determined. He felt scared and out of place and way over his head. But when he looked at Duri, sleeping peacefully despite the day's injuries, something stirred in his chest. The Rattel hadn't given up, hadn't complained, had just kept moving forward. Maybe, Taemin thought, that was the point. Maybe being stubborn enough to keep going was its own kind of strength. 3 weeks into training, and Taemin was starting to understand his companion. Duri operated on a simple principle: identify objective, move toward objective, ignore everything else. It didn't matter if everything else included walls, weapons, or pain. Professor Kimura's xenobiology class became unexpectedly interesting when she dedicated an entire lecture to Rattels. "The Rattel," she explained, displaying a hologram of Duri's species, is one of the galaxy's most fascinating creatures. They possess a nerve structure that transmits pain signals normally, but their brain's response center is severely diminished. They feel pain, they simply don't care about it. The class stared at the hologram. Even Hyun looked interested. Rattels have been documented killing creatures 50 times their size, Kimura continued. Not through strength or speed, but through absolute refusal to stop. They've been observed continuing to fight with broken limbs, severe injuries even after what should be fatal wounds. She paused. The Galactic Wildlife Association had to create a special classification for them. Suicidal Tenacity Class. Why would something evolve like that? Asked Yuna, an Aquari cadet with pale blue skin. Survival strategy, Kimura replied. On their homeworld, Rattels compete with much larger predators. Their solution was simple. Be so difficult to kill, so relentless that predators learn to leave them alone. A Rattel will fight until it wins or dies. There is no middle ground. After class, several cadets approached Taemin for the first time without mockery. They wanted to see Duri up close. To understand this strange creature, Duri, for his part, was trying to dig through the hallway floor and ignored them all. The attitude toward Taemin was shifting, but he wasn't sure if it was for the better. Instead of outright mockery, he now faced something more complex, wary confusion. The other cadets didn't know what to make of him or his companion. Everything changed during the fortress trial. The obstacle fortress was a massive training complex filled with automated defenses, environmental hazards, and shifting walls. Cadets had to navigate from entrance to exit while their battle companions helped them survive. Most pairs finished in 45 minutes to an hour. Taemin and Duri entered on a Wednesday morning. Instructor Vexna started the timer. The first chamber had energy barriers crisscrossing the space in random patterns. Touch one and you'd receive a painful shock. The barriers moved constantly, requiring careful timing to pass through. Other cadets had solved this with speed, or by having their companions disable the generators, or by using shields. Duri walked straight into the first barrier. The energy hit him like a hammer. His fur stood on end, his body convulsed from the shock. Taemin opened his mouth to call him back, but Duri kept walking. He pushed through the barrier, his small body shaking from the electricity. Then he walked into the next barrier. And the next. By the time he reached the far door, he'd been shocked 17 times. He turned and looked back at Taemin, waiting. You're supposed to avoid them, Taemin called out. Duri's expression, if a Rattel could have expression, seemed to say, why? This way is faster. Taemin took a deep breath and ran, timing his movements between the barriers. When he reached Duri, his companion was already pushing through the door to the next chamber. The second chamber was a maze of collapsed passages. Other teams had used strength to clear paths or found clever routes through the debris. Duri started digging. The Rattel's powerful claws tore through rubble, creating tunnels that went under, through, and around the obstacles. Sometimes the passages collapsed on him. Taemin would hear the sounds of digging stop, his heart clenching in fear. Then Duri would emerge from somewhere completely unexpected, covered in dust and unbothered. The third chamber almost broke Taemin's nerve. It was a long corridor with automated turrets mounted on the walls. Heavy training rounds, painful but not lethal. The turrets tracked movement and fired with mechanical precision. Duri looked down the corridor, then started walking. The first turret opened fire. The training rounds hammered into Duri's body, each impact making him stagger, but he kept walking. The second turret joined in. Then the third. Duri, stop. Taemin screamed. Come back. The Rattel glanced back at him, then continued forward. More turrets activated. The sound of gunfire filled the corridor. Taemin watched in horror as his companion took hit after hit, his small body jerking from the impacts. Blood appeared in Duri's fur, not from the training rounds, but from where they'd struck so many times that even his thick hide split open. But Duri reached the first turret. He jumped, grabbed it with his claws, and tore it from the wall. Then he moved to the next one. And the next. He destroyed all 12 turrets, taking hundreds of hits in the process. When the corridor was safe, Duri sat down and looked back at Taemin. His meaning was clear. It's safe now. You can come. Taemin ran to his companion. Duri's fur was matted with blood, his breathing heavy. But when Taemin knelt beside him, the Rattel licked his hand and started walking again. No, Taemin said firmly. We're stopping. You're too hurt. Dury looked at him, then looked at the exit door ahead, then back at Taman. I don't care, Taman said, tears in his eyes. I don't care about finishing. You're hurt. For a long moment, Rattel and Human stared at each other. Then Dury made a huffing sound and lay down, resting his head on his paws. Taman called for medical extraction. They were pulled from the fortress, the trial marked as incomplete. In the medical bay, Jiwan worked on Dury while Taman sat beside the table. The Rattel was already healing. His regeneration was remarkable, but the extent of his injuries shocked the medical staff. He should have stopped, Jiwan said quietly. Any other creature would have. That's the problem, Taman replied. He doesn't know how to stop. That evening, Commander Thrall visited the medical bay. You failed the trial, he said without preamble. Yes, sir. You called for extraction when you were more than halfway through. Another 15 minutes and you would have finished. Yes, sir. Thrall studied Taman for a long moment. Why did you stop? Taman looked at Dury, who was sleeping peacefully despite his bandaged wounds. Because finishing wasn't worth losing him. He would have kept going until he couldn't anymore. Someone had to be smart enough to stop. Something flickered in Thrall's 3 eyes. It might have been respect. The Rattel shows you what pure determination looks like, Thrall said. But determination without wisdom is just suicide. Perhaps you're learning the right lesson after all. After the commander left, Yuna entered the medical bay. She approached hesitantly, looking at Dury's sleeping form. I thought you were just weak, she said quietly. I thought the Academy made a mistake accepting a human. But I watched the video of your trial. She met Taman's eyes. That creature would die for you without hesitation. And you chose him over glory. Maybe humans aren't what I thought. She left before Taman could respond. That night, Taman made a decision. Dury would always give everything, that was his nature. So Taman had to be the one who knew when to push forward and when to protect his companion. The Rattel had chosen him for a reason. Maybe it was time to figure out what kind of warrior he was meant to become. The announcement came during morning formation. The Grand Tournament, the Academy's premier competition where cadets could prove their worth and earn placement in elite units. Teams of 3, Instructor Vexna explained. Mixed combat scenarios. The top teams receive honors, recommendations, and first choice of postings after graduation. Taman didn't expect anyone to ask him. He'd made peace with that. But then Yuna approached him in the dining hall. My team needs a third, she said without preamble. Dohyun and I, we want you. Taman blinked in surprise. Dohyun was a mind weaver, one of the tactical geniuses of their class. You want me? Why? Because you think differently, Dohyun said, appearing beside Yuna. His large head pulsed with soft light, a sign of active thought in his species. Everyone here fights with strength or speed or special abilities. You and your Rattel fight with something else. Stubbornness, persistence. I've been studying your training records. You lose most engagements, but you never stop trying. That's valuable. Plus, Yuna added with a slight smile, Dury scares people now. They don't know how to fight something that won't quit. They formed their team that day. Training together was interesting. Dohyun's battle companion was a phase spider that could teleport short distances. Yuna's was a crystal serpent that could create barriers of solid light. And then there was Dury, who mostly just wanted to dig and occasionally bite things. Their strategy sessions were chaotic. If we encounter the Iron-Tide team, we should use Yuna's serpent to create a barrier, then flank using my spider's teleportation, Dohyun explained, displaying a holographic battlefield. Or Dury could just walk through their attacks and bite their legs, Taman suggested. That's not a strategy, that's just retelling. It works, though. Dohyun's head pulsed with frustrated colors, but he couldn't argue with results. The tournament began on a cold morning. 64 teams, all eager to prove themselves. The format was simple, full-contact combat simulations with lethal force limiters. Victory by knockout, surrender, or ring out. Taman's team won their first match through pure luck. Their opponents underestimated Dury, and by the time they realized the Rattel was ignoring their attacks to dismantle their strategy, it was too late. The second match was harder. The third nearly eliminated them. But somehow, through a combination of Dohyun's planning, Yuna's defense, and Duri's relentless offense, they advanced. By the quarterfinals, people were paying attention. The weakling team with the human had become that stubborn team that won't lose. Their quarterfinal match was against Hyun's team, the Thunder Tide, heavily favored to win the entire tournament. The combat arena that day was a ruined city simulation. Collapsed buildings, debris everywhere, environmental hazards. We can't beat them in direct combat, Do-hyun said before the match. Hyun's Thunder Lizard is too strong. Bora's Lightning Falcon is too fast. Their third member, Kangmin, has a Void Wolf that can phase through attacks. So what do we do? Yuna asked. Taemin looked at Duri. The Rattel looked back, calm and ready. We don't beat them, Taemin said slowly. We outlast them. Do-hyun's head pulsed with interest. Explain. Every team here tries to win quickly with their strongest attacks, big displays of power, but that uses energy. What if we just don't let them win? What if we make them work for every inch? A war of attrition, Do-hyun said, his colors shifting to excited purple. They'll exhaust themselves trying to put us down. We endure, we adapt, we outlast. Can we do that? Yuna asked. Taemin scratched Duri's head. My companion has been showing me how since day one. We don't have to be stronger. We just have to refuse to quit. The match began. Hyun's Thunder Lizard came at them like a storm, electricity crackling across its massive frame. Bora's Falcon dove from above, talons sparking. Kangmin's Void Wolf flanked them, phasing in and out of reality. Most teams would have tried to counter with equal force. Taemin's team did something different. They scattered. They avoided. They made Hyun's team work for every attack. Duri did what Duri did best. When the Thunder Lizard charged, Duri didn't fight it head-on. He went for the legs, biting and clawing, forcing the massive creature to pay attention to the small threat it wanted to ignore. The battle became a marathon, 5 minutes, 10, 15. Hyun's team was used to quick victories. Their attacks were powerful, but costly. The Thunder Lizard's electricity reserves began to deplete. Bora's Falcon couldn't sustain its speed indefinitely. Meanwhile, Duri took hit after hit and kept going. Yuna's Serpent created barriers that absorbed attacks, buying time. Do-hyun's Spider teleported them out of danger when needed. 20 minutes into the match, Hyun was breathing hard. His team had landed dozens of attacks, but Taemin's team was still standing. Why won't you go down? Hyun roared, frustrated. Taemin didn't answer. He couldn't. He was exhausted, bruised, barely standing. But he looked at Duri, who was bleeding from a dozen wounds and still biting the Thunder Lizard's ankle. If Duri wouldn't quit, neither would he. 30 minutes. Hyun's team was exhausted. The Thunder Lizard moved slower, its electricity flickering. Bora's Falcon had landed, unable to fly anymore. Kangmin's Void Wolf was panting, its phasing ability used up. That's when Do-hyun struck. With his opponents exhausted, his Spider teleported him behind Kangmin and delivered a knockout blow. Then Yuna's Serpent trapped Bora in a crystal barrier. It came down to Hyun and his Thunder Lizard versus Taemin's entire team. The massive Krath warrior looked at them, sweat dripping down his gray hide. You didn't fight fair. We fought smart, Do-hyun replied. Hyun looked at his exhausted Thunder Lizard, then at Duri, who was limping but still ready to keep going. Finally, he lowered his hand. I surrender. The arena fell silent. Then it erupted. The weakling team had beaten the tournament favorites not through power, but through sheer stubborn endurance. In the medical bay afterward, Ji-won patched up Duri while shaking her head. One day you're going to explain to me how this creature is still alive. He's too stubborn to die, Taemin said, and for the first time since arriving at the academy he smiled with real confidence. They had reached the semi-finals, but more importantly, they'd proven something. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't power. It's the refusal to give up. The semi-finals never happened. Instead, alarms screamed through the academy at midnight, red lights flashing in every corridor. Taemin woke from a dead sleep, his door chime blaring. Duri was already awake, standing at attention with his ears perked. All combat-ready cadets to the main hangar. Vexna's voice echoed through the station. This is not a drill. We are under attack. The hangar was chaos. Senior cadets in combat gear, instructors barking orders, and at the center of it all, Commander Thrall standing before a massive holographic display. The hive has awakened, Thrall announced, his voice cutting through the noise. Everyone fell silent. The hive were legendary, ancient automated warships from a long-dead civilization, still fighting a war that ended 10,000 years ago. A fleet of hive drones has activated in Sector 7. They've already destroyed 2 cargo vessels and are moving toward populated systems. The hologram showed the battle. Galactic defense forces were engaged, but the hive ships were adapting to every tactic, their AI learning and countering strategies in real time. All available forces are being mobilized, Thrall continued. That includes Academy cadets. You will serve as support troops. Board transports immediately. Within an hour, Taemin found himself on a military cruiser heading toward the combat zone. Yuna and Dohyun were with him, along with their entire class. The mood was tense. This wasn't training. This was real. Through the viewport, Taemin could see the battle. Explosions bloomed in the void as hive drones engaged galactic ships. The drones were elegant and terrible, smooth silver shapes that moved with mechanical precision, repairing damage as fast as it was dealt. They're adapting too quickly, a military officer explained during the briefing. We damage them, they repair. We develop a tactic, they counter it within minutes. Their central reactor station is the key. It powers their repair systems and provides energy for new drones. If we destroy it, we cut off their ability to regenerate. Where is this reactor? Hyun asked. The officer highlighted a massive structure in the hologram. A sphere the size of a small moon, surrounded by defensive platforms and pulsing with deadly radiation. Here, but it's impossible to reach. The radiation alone would kill any strike team before they got close. We'd need shielded ships to get near, but the hive destroys any ship that approaches. What about a small team? Commander Thrall asked quietly. Something too small for the hive to prioritize? Even if you got past the defenses, the radiation levels inside the reactor chamber would kill anyone within minutes. And that's before dealing with the internal defenses. The officer shook his head. It's suicide. Taemin felt Thrall's eyes on him. All 3 of them, the commander's 3 alien eyes studying him with an expression Taemin had never seen before. It looked almost like recognition. After the briefing, Thrall called Taemin to a private meeting room. I need to tell you something, the commander said. Before you came to this academy, I fought humans. It was a border dispute quickly resolved, but I saw human soldiers that day. Taemin waited, unsure what to say. They terrified me, Thrall continued. Not because they were strong or skilled, but because they fought like they'd already decided to die. They didn't retreat when wounded, didn't surrender when outnumbered. They just kept coming, kept fighting, even when logic said they should run. He paused. I realized something that day. Humans have what the Rattel has, that ability to keep moving forward when everyone else would quit. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. The reactor mission? Thrall interrupted. I believe you and Dury could reach it. The Rattel's radiation resistance is remarkable, and you... He looked at Taemin intently. You've learned to think like your companion, to endure what seems unendurable. Taemin's mouth went dry. You're asking me to volunteer for a suicide mission. I'm asking if you and your companion are willing to do what no one else can. The radiation will hurt you both terribly. You might not survive. But if you succeed, you'll save thousands of lives. Taemin looked down at Dury. The Rattel looked back up at him with those calm, fearless eyes. They'd been together for months now. Taemin had learned to read his companion's moods, his thoughts. And right now Dury's posture said what it always said. Tell me what needs doing. We'll do it, Taemin said. The infiltration pod was small, barely enough room for Taemin in his radiation suit and Dury by his side. They launched from a stealth vessel, tumbling through space like debris toward the reactor station. Hive drones flashed past, ignoring the small pod. They were focused on the larger ships, just as Thrall had predicted. They hit the reactor's outer hull hard. Taemin's teeth rattled, but they were inside the defensive perimeter. Radiation levels increasing, his suit computer announced. Current exposure, survivable for 18 minutes. They had 18 minutes to cross half a kilometer of hostile station, reach the reactor core, and plant charges. Then get out. Taman cut through the hull plating. The moment they entered the station, combat drones activated, smaller versions of the hive ships built for interior defense. Dury didn't wait for orders. He charged the nearest drone. The little Rattel couldn't significantly damage the armored machines, but he didn't need to. He bit at their joints, clawed at their sensors, made himself impossible to ignore. The drone's attention focused on this annoying creature, giving Taman precious seconds to move forward. Radiation levels critical, his suit warned. Exposure 12 minutes until lethal dose. They fought deeper into the station. Dury took laser burns, impact hits, electrical shocks, but he kept going, kept being the distraction that saved Taman's life over and over. Taman's suit began to fail. Seals ruptured from combat damage. Radiation poured in. He felt it immediately, a sick burning in his bones, his vision going strange at the edges. The suit computer started screaming warnings. 7 minutes. 6 minutes, 5. They reached the reactor chamber. Through the massive window, Taman could see the core, a sphere of pure energy, beautiful and deadly. His hands shook as he placed the charges. Each movement felt like pushing through thick syrup. Radiation poisoning was setting in fast. Charges set, he whispered into his comm. Detonating in 60 seconds. Extraction pod incoming, a voice replied. Get to the marked point. Taman turned to leave. His legs wouldn't work, right? He stumbled, fell. Dury was there instantly, grabbing Taman's suit with his teeth, pulling. No, Taman tried to say. Too heavy. Save yourself. But Rattels don't understand save yourself. They understand complete the objective. And right now, the objective was getting Taman out. Dury dragged his warrior across the station floor. Combat drones fired at them. Dury took hits meant for Taman, his body jerking from impacts. But his jaws never released their grip. The extraction point was 100 meters away. 50, 20. Taman's vision was fading. He could feel his body shutting down. Cells dying from radiation exposure. Other cadets had defied orders. Yuna's crystal serpent appeared, creating a barrier against the drones. Do-Yoon's phase spider teleported in, grabbing Taman and Dury, pulling them toward the extraction pod. Even Hyon was there, his thunder lizard providing covering fire. They made it to the pod with seconds to spare. The station exploded behind them as they launched away, the reactor core going critical and destroying the hive's regeneration capability. The battle turned quickly after that. Without repairs and reinforcements, the hive drones were defeated within hours. Taman woke up 3 weeks later in the Academy Medical Center. His body was wrapped in regeneration bandages, machines humming around him. The first thing he saw was Dury, curled up on the bed beside him. The Rattel looked terrible, patches of fur still growing back, scars visible even through his thick hide. But he was alive. Welcome back, Jawan said, appearing beside the bed. You took a lethal dose of radiation. By all rights, you should be dead. But apparently humans are almost as stubborn as Rattels when it comes to survival. Over the next few days, Taman learned what had happened. The hive threat was neutralized. The Academy had been commended. And he was now a hero, the human cadet who'd done the impossible. Commander Thrall visited on the 4th day. The tournament has been postponed, he said. But it doesn't matter. You've already proven everything you needed to prove. He placed a medal on Taman's bedside table, the Adamant Star, awarded for refusing to break under impossible circumstances. I didn't do it alone, Taman said, stroking Dury's head. No, Thrall agreed. The bond reflects inner spirit, remember? Your companion showed you what you were capable of. And you showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. What's that? The same thing Rattels are capable of. Enduring, persisting, refusing to quit when quitting is the logical choice. Thrall's 3 eyes gleamed. You know what the other species are saying now? They're saying that humans are the 2-legged Rattels. They mean it as a compliment. After Thrall left, Yuna and Do-Yoon visited, then Hyun, who actually apologized for his early mockery, then Bora, who admitted she'd been wrong about everything. The Academy had changed for Taman, or maybe he'd changed for it. A month later, Taman was cleared for duty. He and Dury walked through the Academy halls heading toward their new assignment, an elite unit that wanted them specifically for their unique abilities.